We can start with questions for Coach Cooley.
Any questions?
John, and how much different is it having JC out there on the field, and how does that change what you're able to teach and do on the field this time of year?
I think having JC, like a player like that, he affects a lot of people around him. So it allows us to put more pressure on him to take away one side of the field, and it allows other guys to grow within a role that we can see expressed. You know, you don't have a lot of guys that is blessed with what he has in his body, and if he's available, he's one of the best.
With the departure of Dante Jackson and then with JC's injury history, were there any concerns about depth now as you guys complete the first part of voluntary OTA?
I think we're in a good place right now with the guys that we have. And so, you know, Dan's done a good job of identifying people through the draft and through free agency that are going to come in and help us. And the guys have done a fantastic job, and I think we'll have an excellent amount of depth. We have enough able bodies. Now it's just about developing them and creating roles for them in our defense.
When we're both back to JC, when you have conversations with him, you sense any toll from the last few years, just the middle part of having injuries every year, that how that's impacted him, and is that something you have to help him work through at all? Or?
I think he's been the clearest mentally this season that he's been. He seems free. He seems excited to perform, and he's focused on just like getting better each day. And that's all you can ask from a great player, just attacking each day. He comes to work with urgency, and he tries to get better at something. So he's been in a fantastic mindset, I think.
When you say that, I mean, you weren't around him before, so what gives you that feeling that he's in that right place?
Well, just last year, the pressure of the newness, you know, like I was a new coach, Ejiro was a new defense coordinator, totally new defense, and, you know, and getting adapted. Now he's comfortable and he understands what we're going to ask of him. So for me, it's just been like he's just seemed freer. You know, beforehand, I can't necessarily comment, but where he's at right now, I love it.
Regarding the depth, can you speak to the chances of adding Gilmore before training camp?
I think that's more of a Dan question. You know, whoever our front office identifies and wanting to add, I'll be happy to coach them.
It seems like Shaw's been a guy that's been kind of labeled as a nickel, but what do you feel like he can bring as an outside guy?
It's to be determined. We haven't played him as much out there. I think his translates immediately as nickel. But, you know, as we go through training camp and preseason, we'll get to experiment with him on the outside. But what he does have is he's got a great mental aptitude. He attacks his learning. And then, you know, he just does a good job of getting around the pros and, like, modeling himself after them.
The team. What have been the benefits to having all those former Rams in the DB room?
Oh, well, those guys. So the exciting thing is, like, those are the type of guys that kind of can finish my sentences. And so, like, having them out there on the grass, it adds a little bit more ownership involving what we have to offer as a defense. So those guys are kind of an extension of myself and Ejiro because they understand and they have a lot of context how we want things coached. And a lot of times players are better coaches than we are, you know, so they can connect with the younger guys and help. So I think it's been a blessing to have those guys around because it's just amplified what we're able to do as a defense.
You guys are able to have continuity on the defensive side, returning everybody despite the head coaching change. How has that process been with the new coach in Canales and merging the two offensive and defensive?
You know, Coach Canales does a great job of creating relationships. He's very intentional. So being able to create a cross-platform and like situations where we can get to know each other. Like he's come to my yoga classes, you know, with me, and we go at 5:45 in the morning. So, like, one thing I love about Coach Canales is, like, he's done an excellent job of, like, not only preaching relationships, but being intentional about developing with the coaches and the players. And so, like, that's allowed us to have an environment where we can get along because our world hasn't changed much on defense. It's just interacting and getting used to the people on the other side of the ball.
Can you expand on that and, like, examples of how he's building relationships?
Well, yeah, my specific one, I walked out of the locker room and he was like, you just come from the sauna? I was like, no, I do yoga. And he said, he was like, well, when do you go? I was like 5:45 in the morning. He was like, which days? Well, every day I got to come to work. I'm gonna go to yoga. And he was like, well, I'll come. And so the next morning, he showed up on a Thursday, bright and early, and he was ready to go. So I think he's been 4 consecutive weeks with me on Thursdays. So you guys can hold him accountable if he misses a day.
See, like, adapted really well.
It's hot, yeah.
So you adapted really well to the yoga? Or?
He is, because it's hot yoga with weight. So, the instructors will call me out. So they had no issues calling him out if he was slacking any bit. But, it's been cool, like, to develop that relationship. And, like, that's my example. I know a lot of other people have personal examples. When we had the Kenny Chesney concert, he'll have people over his house. He just got moved in. So that's been the one thing, like, getting used to, because the football hasn't really changed for us on our side of the ball. But, creating that connection and that closeness, somebody that you can believe in from that standpoint will allow you to go an extra mile when you don't necessarily feel like it. So.
You got a promotion during the offseason. How have your responsibilities kind of changed with that?
I would just say, just for a more global aspect, just collaboration with Ejiro on the passing game, and then just taking more of a responsibility in evaluating incoming safeties in the position. Just a more global responsibility. Not necessarily much change from last year, because we always meet together as a defensive back group. And all our coaches in there do an excellent job in that. So it's just a nice thing for the organization to show belief in you, which is very, inspiring to me.
Do folks at Hot Yoga recognize you and Dave?
Yes, so they know me well, because that's my little community. And then I'm not shy. So and then they had no problems with calling me out and calling him out, because I brought my buddy. So they were like, this is your buddy Dave, that's his name, right? And then I get a text like, oh, I didn't realize that was the head coach. And I was like, yeah. So, but yeah, he's known in there. But it's a if you wake up at 5:45 and do an exercise, you're kind of really about it. And most people on the mat are kind of like in their own little zone. So it's, not much of a distraction. And if anybody else signs up, there's a wait list. So, like.
Starting your day with Hot Yoga on work days, what is the connection for you?
So I believe in how you start and you finish your day is everything. So, like, in this business, if, we may start meetings at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And, if you wake up about 6:30 and you have to go to work for a 7 o'clock meeting, then the day takes away from you. So I know if I get up on my own time and spend time on me when I start the day, I know I can move the needle for myself just personally. And, like, in our room, we preach just getting better each day. So, like, I kind of call it like Operation No Bad Days. So if I can get up and get better, I know whatever happens at the rest of the day, I know I at least got better for that day. So it just allows me to have a positive outlook. I'm not a coffee drinker, so, like, a sweat gets me in a good mood. So I can be, my best self when I show up at work. That's kind of why I do it. And, it's just, one of my mentors always told me, be what you want your players to be. So that's kind of why I do that.
You got time for a few more? One more JC question. He said a few weeks ago he felt like he still was one of the best corners in the NFL. What about him, you believe that, I guess, and what about him makes you believe that he'll be that?
I certainly believe that. A great example was watching him in our last game against Tampa Bay and how he was able to dominate his matchup. And what he has is rare. He has size, he has speed, he has instincts, and he's very tough. And the one thing that separates him from a lot of guys is his competitive drive. And so I think he can be at best. We just talk about a thing. We just going to play 17 games, and we'll just take it from there.
Get him into hot yoga?
Well, I don't know about that, but Pilates maybe for him, so.
You're up a lot with Dave Jackson on the other side of the field just through all season so far. How have those two kind of come along together, and what have you seen from Dane since he's been here as well?
Well, Dane's been an excellent teammate so far, coming from Buffalo, and he's just a come-to-work guy. He's done a really good job adapting to what we're trying to ask him with the scheme, and Dane's no nonsense. So he plays tough and he has great energy, and so the guys kind of gravitate towards him in that manner. And his demeanor's great. He's very calm, but when he gets out there on the grass, he kind of turns up. And JC's going to gravitate towards anybody that gets a little bit of high energy. So,
Jonathan, coaches are creatures of habits. Wonder what you thought about the NFLPA proposal to tweak, really more than tweak, but alter the OTA and training camp schedule.
I like the way our OTAs are now. If they decide, I'm always pro player. So if the players believe that's something that they'll make them more available, then I'm for. But like whatever they line up in front of us, I just got to go. So.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks.